I remember being in like second grade and trying to save up my allowance to get liposuction.
Were you like at an unhealthy weight in second grade?
No.
So it was just like...
Yeah. I just remember being like, I remember being like 8 and being like, I'm not shaped like an hourglass, and wanting plastic surgery.
Yeah.
Payton Cabrera is a sophomore at Boston University from Dallas, Texas. Cabrera has played sports for most of her life and currently plays club volleyball at Boston University. She agreed to speak with me about her lifelong struggle with her satisfaction with her body.
Being in so many sports since I was young, it was always like part of, because like with volleyball, everything's like super tight to your body, so it was always something that's like at least a little bit in your mind. And in just like having pictures taken and things like that, and if you're not like posed at every given moment, just how like unflattering things can be, and kind of like always having to struggle with like that image. Yeah. My family actually had a very positive relationship with weight. It was always like eat what makes you happy, but also like everything in moderation. And everyone was very active, so like I never had like a negative view of it from my family at all, and I still haven't. I know a lot of people that like they have a lot of that kind of influence.
Yeah.
But I never really had that. It was more just like, it was more media and more kind of just being someone involved in sports and like seeing all like the different types of bodies, and I definitely like, I'm huge, like I'm super tall, and so it was always just like a combination of being like 6'1" and like hitting my growth spurt when I was like 8.
Yeah.
And so it was always like something was always off about the way that I looked, at least in my mind. But yeah.
Where was there like maybe like a person or a TV show or something that you like got your like beauty ideal from when you were 8 that you can think of?
Not that I can think of. I remember being very like invested in like the thinspo type things on like Tumblr, and things like that, and I like got very obsessed with like an unhealthy way of looking, and had problems with that when I was younger, but I don't remember anyone like in particular.
Was there a specific part of your body that made you most uncomfortable, or
just stomach, I think because I was always like, I'm built like a sausage. And like I don't know, because like I was always athletic, so I was like always built like I was athletic, and I played basketball for a really long time, and I played volleyball, and so I was always like sturdy, and I had a lot of friends who were like super tiny, and so I always like was around that sort of thing.
When you were like looking at the thinspo and stuff on Tumblr, like to you, is that like, were you looking at that as like, oh that's like skinny, or is like, oh that's like healthy, like I need to get there?
I always looked at it as being skinny. I don't remember ever thinking like, oh that's like, that's healthy.
Yeah.
I just remember being like, that's the best way to look.
Okay.
My like health was always based around sports and being performance driven. So it wasn't necessarily a certain image for health. It was more just like, oh, that's aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah. When and how did you begin like managing your weight and feeling like comfortable with that? Or
never.
Okay.
I don't think. I mean, I think there was always just like a sense of like I never like got in trouble with my doctor kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was always just like, and I was very aware of it. I remember when I was in sophomore going to junior year of high school, there was this one volleyball coach that was like super well known and was like he was like the old like Olympic coach from China and was like, super intense, and he weighed people every week, and if you didn't make weight then you had to run for the entire practice, or like you would get benched. And so I remember like from like freshman year, because like I was really looking at playing in college, and so I was like looking at the coaches that would get me there, and so it's always like, oh, if you play for Ping, you'll go to a big school, and so Ping is the coach. But so it was always this thing where like, so I remember starting like freshman sophomore year being like trying to follow his diet, just so I could like be more appealing to being on his team. And then I had like this really toxic boyfriend who his whole family was like, just fast all the time. And that was like senior year of high school, and then like the peak of the like thinspo thing was like 7th to 8th grade. So I remember like going days without eating and like doing that thing. And so there was always like a version of trying to like monitor it and make changes. Some were more successful than others, and some made me feel worse than others, but it's I feel like it's been since like middle school.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's ever been a point where I've been like content.
Was that also when you started getting social media and like having full access to the internet, or?
I think this started before then. Okay. I wasn't like super active on social media until like high school. I ended up like not playing for him, and then I got it from some of his players, like what they were told to eat, and it would be like eat like a cup of almonds for lunch and like things like that, because like each of the diets were like tailored towards the way that you looked at the time, because he wanted all of his players to look the exact same. And so I was friends with one of the girls who like looked more like me, and so I kind of like followed what she was told. And then she ended up like dropping a bunch of weight, and I remember being like super jealous, but that she ended up like passing out at a bunch of tournaments because she was like going too far. For like my senior year is when I was like hardcore keto fasting, and I remember passing out at work because I just like hadn't eaten that day or something, and I was like, okay, like it's working. I'm on the way. So I'm so bad at feeding myself. I'm literally like I'm in her house right now, and I'm becoming an RA for the sole purpose, pretty much, of having a dining plan.
Yeah. So and then how do you feel about when people talk about like weight and being healthy?
I think my mom was great about like strong is healthy and size doesn't necessarily equal health. And whether it's being super tiny and being healthy or being big and unhealthy, like it was not necessarily one and the same either way. And so I always looked at it more as like habits made you healthy, and you might not necessarily be like the tiniest person, but like if you know that you're eating well and you know that you're going to the gym and you know that you're doing things that make you feel best, then you're healthy. Like it was never necessarily like a size dependent thing so much as just like kind of doing what made you feel best.
Yeah. When do you think that you and your mom had your first like discussion like about weight and stuff?
I feel like I was so young. Like I feel like kindergarten.
Really?
Yeah. Like I remember it all starting like super early.
Yeah.
I remember being like super mad because my little sister was like always really like skinny, and whenever we would go to McDonald's, I got like a burger and she would get chicken nuggets, and then she always ate more than I did, and I was always pissed off because she ate all the chicken nuggets and she was always tiny. I think there's always part of me that's always gonna be like, oh yeah, that would be better. But I think it's because I feel like everyone ends up looking the same, like regardless of where they started, that everyone always like kind of ends up with the same body type, which always makes me skeptical because I feel like I don't look like anyone else. I've always had a different body type. And so I've always had like a problem in terms of like looking towards plastic surgery or things like that, and like how does everyone look the same?
Yeah.
But I think that's also like evolved. Like it used to be like almost like a masculine, very like straight figured kind was like very like the thing.
Yeah.
Like, and that if you were like fit, then you were just like ripped. And then I feel like it's changed to more like everything's about your butt, and like it's all kind of like, I feel like it won't be very long until something else takes over.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a conversation around necessarily just like loving yourself, but like, and then like wanting to change, and more along the lines of like you're allowed to love who you are and still want to be better without making it something that's like negative or like trying to tear somebody down. Because I think some people are at the point where they may be on the verge of being unhealthy, and I think there's definitely something to be said about being able to recognize that and still like being like, hell yeah, I do the damn thing, but like also being able to take steps to be healthier, whatever that means for the individual person. And like of course like some people maybe just like carry more weight and some people might whatever, but I think like there is a line, but I don't think that whether that line is crossed or not should change the way somebody feels about themselves. I feel like I'm very like product driven, so I think of like playing volleyball and think of like the moments that are most influential there are like when you get like that crazy block last second, or you get a kill when you need to, and just kind of the energy of that and kind of gearing, I guess, my version of health towards the success there, and like being able to have that power and being able to have that energy.
Do you still follow any of those like inspo accounts or anything like that, or are there any like models or anything that you follow?
No, I think I had like I feel like that kind of ended after the bulk of my like middle school angsty, I want to be as tiny as humanly possible kind of phase. And then I think like, especially towards like the end of high school, and towards now, it's kind of geared more towards like people like Serena Williams, and like where it's strong and not necessarily a certain body type so much as it is like being strong in who you are. So like I think I've definitely like, even since I've got to college, I've had like days where I'm like, okay, because like this year the whole thing was that I did intermittent fasting, and so I got to a point where I was like, oh, if I won't eat at these periods, but that kind of, and then I remember like literally like halfway through however long I was doing that, I ended up talking, like one of my professors like gave a lecture on like the importance of fueling at certain times, and I was like, oh shit. But I think it's like, it's brought up a little bit, and like not necessarily in so many of the classes that I'm taking right now, but like I'm in systems phys right now, and in talking about kind of energy storage and the way that energy is obtained and things like that, and kind of thinking about it in that light has kind of changed my view of foods and things like that. But also at the same time, I think that puts me in like almost a worse mindset, because it makes me think of things in terms of like being very disconnected from kind of enjoying food and turning it more into just like, okay, you only eat this much now because that's all you need. And I think that's fair in some circumstances, but I think it's also kind of, it can be dangerous, and like it doesn't like, I think people should also be able to enjoy what they eat, and it doesn't necessarily need to be like, I'm gonna sniff this lettuce and that will be my meal because there's no calories. Then I think like you can do the like salad whenever, but also I think it's not reasonable to ask people to also then like ignore cheesecake for the rest of their life, you know?
According to the Assistant Director and Senior Nutritionist at Boston University's Sargent Choice Nutrition Center, Rachel Reynolds, the most vulnerable age for development of eating disorders is 18 to 21 years old, which is commonly the age of students in college. For those who are transitioning to college, many factors may influence their eating habits, including adjustment to dining hall and meal plans, academic and new schedules, time management, social life, and other stressors related to the transition. Students involved in sports or significant physical activity have higher energy requirements, which is a challenge they face. The variation in their schedules in and out of season, injured versus healthy, and training versus competing also impacts their needs and can be challenging for students to manage. All BU students are eligible for nutrition counseling at the Sargent Choice Nutrition Center. Every individual is eligible for an interactive nutrition workshop series and one individual nutrition session with a registered dietitian nutritionist, each academic year at no cost. Students who have any concerns that put them at higher nutritional risk, such as food allergies, food-related medical conditions, weight-related concerns, eating disorders, sports nutrition, cardiovascular risk factors, and others, are eligible for up to 5 individual sessions with a registered dietitian nutritionist at Sargent Choice Nutrition Center, each academic year at no cost. Students can choose to continue with their clinician through their insurance benefits once they have used their free individual session each year. In addition, the Sargent Choice Healthy Dining Program is a collaboration between Sargent Choice Nutrition Center and BU Dining Services. Sargent Choice meal options are available in all residential dining halls at all meal periods. In addition, Sargent Choice Nutrition Center registered dietitian nutritionists teach 6 sections of 1-credit nutrition and cooking skill classes at FitRec each semester. Lauren O'Brien is a senior nutritionist at Sargent Choice Nutrition Center and focuses on sports nutrition. O'Brien has been out of the office since April 11th until May 1st and is unavailable for comment.